a really good time out there taking photos. I actually went back, so the photos I've got for this are a combination of 2 days. But first of all, I need to address a question. You see, I call this chocolate box photography, whereas the person whose real idea it was calls it chocolate bar photography. Now the reason he calls it chocolate bar photography is because if you give somebody who's really hungry a single block of chocolate, they're not really going to be satisfied. Whereas if you give them the whole bar, then they can really, gorge themselves and enjoy the whole thing. Whereas to me, this is a chocolate box. Each of them is slightly different. They're on a theme, they're all chocolate, but you can mix them up. So you have some really nice ones, and if you're trying to make a statement, you can add some not so nice ones, what I would call the coffee ones, because I'm not a big fan of coffee. So you've then got a few sort of spicy ones that are slightly different. You can also pick the ones that you like, and you can even give the sort of chocolate box to people to look at and have a sort of investigate and maybe a bit of a smell and a sort of a taste without telling them what the things are, and then you can later provide them with the card so they can have a look at it, and you can provide them with the information on which each of the chocolates are and why they're in there. So that's why I call it a chocolate box. Now, as I say, this is Niall's idea, and Niall is a really fantastic photographer, and I would suggest you have a look at his website. He's really is one of the top landscape and wildlife photographers for many years, and a real creative. So you've been out in the field, you've taken your images, and you're back at home. Now what you need to do is to decide what shape your images are going to be to make up your chocolate box. Now I've gone fairly traditional, I've gone for square. You then need to go into a piece of software to actually lay out the sort of grid. Now, because I use a PC and because I have Windows 365, I've decided to use Microsoft Publisher, which is a fairly basic publishing program. And the first step is to create your image. So if you go into Microsoft Publisher and start new, you'll be given an option of page sizes. You need to go into custom. Now, to keep things simple, I've decided that my images will be 9 cm square, and there will be 1 cm margin around each of the images. So I'm going to create a document that is effectively 10 cm plus 1 for every square in that direction. So I'm doing a 6 by 4. So that's 6 times 10 plus 1 equals 61 centimetres. 4 times 10 plus 1 equals 41. So I'm creating a document that's 61 centimetres by 41 with a 1 centimetre margin around it, which is fairly easy to set up. And here's one I've created earlier, if it appears. So this is taking a little bit of time just to load for some strange reason. So here we go. So the first job that I've done is to create a couple of rectangles that are exactly 1 centimetre across. Once I'm happy with these, I'll then hit copy and paste the relevant number of times. So here it would be 5 rows and 3 columns. Once you've got your copied elements, you can then start arranging them to the correct place. The best thing to do here is to really zoom in and get this right, and once this is done you end up with a grid like this. Again, at this stage I would save it, because if you're going to come back and do more of these, then you're saving yourself a job. So this gives you your guidelines to actually add the photos. The photos have been processed in Lightroom, so what I've done is I've made them square and I've tended to try and make them quite sort of bold and zingy, so I've sort of upped the saturation, upped the colours, zoomed into the element that I'm looking for, because they're only going to be quite small, so you need them to pop. Once they've been imported, and if you import them all at the same time, it makes it easier. Then you can start arranging the grid and sort of play around with what you want to be in various places. And I'm just going to go into the next stage of the image. So yeah, so you want to sort of have a rough idea what's going to be in certain positions. So here, my first column, I've decided to effectively do the car park in the area around the visitor centre at Cyrus National Nature Reserve. The next column is effectively the route to the beach, the sort of various things that you see as you're getting down to the beach. Then at the high tide line there's all this driftwood, so the next column I've got is the driftwood. Past that is the coffee layer in my case, which is the sort of shocking nasties, the litter. And then it's the shells, and then it's actually the seashore, so it's the waves, the waves hitting against the shoreline. So you've got that spread across the beach like the original picture. So at this point you really are trying to add things in and play around, so it's reasonably sort of rough and ready. Quite like this one. So you're building this up and you can sort of play with it and move things around before you start getting them into the exact position. So this is the design I'm going for. Once you're happy with everything, you can then start filling them up and get them into the exact spot. So if you go along and put it in a corner very carefully, then you can expand them out and you can get everything into place. So by going through and doing this, you can then come up with your, well, not final image, because I don't think this is a final image. The reason being that you can continue improving on it. This is one of the reasons I really like this type of photography. You can add another row. I mean, I use a GoPro, it's waterproof. I can do some underwater photography, sort of mock pools. You can also decide that one of the elements is a bit weak, so I'll go back and get a better version. So it's a type of photography that only really ends when you have a use for it, or you decide to share it or print it. So it can get you going back to the same place time and time again, just trying to sort of improve on what you've got. And there's so many things you could do. You could make the rows seasonal, for example. So you could have spring, summer, autumn, winter, and sort of have the same scenes but with different weather conditions. You don't even have to take all the photos yourself. In my sort of day job, one of the things that I'm involved with is trying to get people out onto the coast to sort of learn about the coastline. So you could actually get groups of people to go out there and take photos, and then you bring them back and make the montage to share with them later. So it could be a school group, or like a sea shed. It could be anybody could go out there and capture their local environment. Also, given that we're in lockdown at the moment, this could be your garden, this could be your living room. You can do this sort of photography anywhere. If you have a regular walk that you do, it gets you to look at it in a different way. And also, it's useful for me because I supply images to one of the conservation charities that has its own photo library. And this just saves time. It means you go out there and get lots of photos that are potentially useful, that potentially are saleable images. But instead of spending ages trying to get that one sort of hero epic shot, you're getting lots of useful photos that could well be used, could be in print. So it's a great way of sort of increasing your productivity as well. And another thing with this is that it doesn't need to be in great conditions. So, for example, if you've been out and photographed the golden hour and had a really great dawn, you've got the perfect light, and then the light's gone, well, instead of just leaving, you can then start taking these little shots. You can then start adding to the image and taking more photos and being productive. Similarly, grey day, you're going for a walk. Well, if you're doing this, then you can take your camera gear with you. And if you're lucky, things may turn out well. The second visit I had to this site, it wasn't great conditions, but there was something about the sea that day. It was just so metallic. It just looked really, really sort of smooth. There'd obviously been quite a swell, but it had died down, and the way the light was, it just looked like sort of liquid mercury. So I decided to set things up, and I'll show you a little bit of film now.
So our last photo at St Cyrus, it's quite calm, and I'm photographing the lighthouse in the distance. Now it's flashing reasonably regularly. I'm trying to get these waves sort of moving slowly in the screen, slowly across the image. So I've actually set it up on a interval timer so I can get lots of photos, sort of one after the other, and then pick the best one. So this is my favourite. I hope you like it.
So I set the camera up really low so that I'd catch as much wave action as possible, but I focused on the Ferryden Lighthouse, which is probably 3-4 miles away. So I was using the 100-400 towards the 400 end, and I really wanted to get some interesting waves, but I also wanted to get the light flashing. Now, with a bit of time you could predict when the light was going to flash by counting, but what I decided to do, just to save myself the sort of work, was to set the camera up on interval timer and then just leave it to take multiple images. Each one was about a second, so I wasn't trying to get that sort of ghostly smoothness, but I also wanted to sort of show the movement and focus in on the lighthouse. So eventually I came up with this shot. Now I'll just go back to the original here. So this is as shot. Now I really like this image. I like the movement. I really like the light. I actually like these little lights that you can see along the lighthouse itself. So I really like that photo, but I could do with your help on this one. You see, I like this, and if you agree that this is the best, can you please put a comment below saying middle. Sorry, I'm just going to move the blacks. Okay. Could you put middle? Now I also really like it about here. It's a lot brighter scene. It's sort of lightened things up. You can still see the lighthouse, but it's not quite such a dark scene. So if you like this one, put bright below in the comments. But I also like what we saw when we first started. I quite like this. I quite like the sort of really dark image with the light shining, safety here. So I like this one, and if you like this one, please type dark in below. And I'd be interested to see what people think. All three of them I really like. I did take a lot of images, and this was the best one. I also put the camera quite low to the ground so that I got as much waves as I could do. So if I hadn't been out there taking this chocolate box images, these little images of everything, I wouldn't have had the camera gear with me to take this shot. So I'm really pleased with this. I really like this setup, and it's something I'll do a lot. I mean, I'm even thinking of exhibitions in the future. So this is something I'll work on. It applies to so many different things. So I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, I'm thinking of setting up a Facebook group so people can share these and we can give each other hints and tips. If this is something you'd be interested in, please get in touch with me. And also, if you would do, please like and subscribe. I've got quite a few more films coming up. So if you'd like and subscribe, then you'll know what's out there. I'm going to be looking at panoramic images, and I've got some interesting wildlife projects one really yucky wildlife project and a wild year post that I need to be doing soon, so I'm going to be quite busy. So yeah, so please like and subscribe, and thank you very much for watching. Thank you for now.